Live in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Good Morning Show with Candy Bryan. Today is Town Hall Tuesday. I am so very grateful that you are tuning in, that we have our guests here with us, and I hope that you will come away from this conversation changed. We are going to explore some different topics, and we're going to talk about much of what is happening, which all of you are seeing and experiencing along with us. We're going to let a few folks join us this morning, and then we're going to start introductions. I am completely overwhelmed with the guests that I have this morning. The amount of just power and that is right here, present in this space, is just absolutely amazing. So again, thank you for tuning into the Good Morning Show. We're going to ask that if you are watching this, click the share button. What's most important, especially now, is that we're all sharing information, is that we are doing this together, for one, and that we are connecting the dots. My guests this morning are TJ Chatman. He is a radio show host. He has organized a march in Sanford that is absolutely amazing. Monique Worrell, she's running for state attorney in Orange and Osceola County. And Schellie Fanfan of Ask Schellie Consulting. She is a state of Florida licensed mental health professional and therapist. All right, so TJ, we're going to kick off the discussion. And ladies, you'll be joining us here in just a second. TJ, welcome to the show. Would you please, how about I bring TJ up? TJ can't talk if he's not on camera. TJ, thank you for being my guest this morning. Would you introduce yourself to the folks that are watching this morning? If you're watching, go ahead and hit that share button, tag a friend. We want to see you here on the broadcast with us. Good morning, TJ.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be on the morning show. And, you know, I'm just humbled to be able to talk about my platform, talk about upcoming events, and just to, communicate with, a fellow broadcaster who's also in the industry. And it's great when we can both collaborate together and, help each other out, because in times like this, we have to help each other instead of, competing and trying to tear each other down. So I'm definitely grateful and humble to be here this morning.
Thank you for taking out time. You are busy, and this week is probably exceptionally busy. So tell us a little bit about your background, and you are a broadcaster as well, and then we'll get into the peaceful march that you've organized.
Sure, absolutely. For those who don't know me, my name's TJ Chatman. I am the host of the TJ Chatman Show, radio and TV personality. It's powered by the Culture Radio, the Culture TV. You can follow me on all social media platforms, the TJ Chatman Show. And basically I've been in this industry for now since 2017. I've wanted to do it all my life, but sometimes we try to rush things, and when we do, it fails. So I just, sat back, waited my time, and, as of November 17th of 2017, the TJ Chatman Show was created, and we've been running strong ever since.
Congratulations first on
Thank you.
Being resilient, right? Because like you said, it takes time to build that audience, to build your community, and you've done a wonderful job. I've had a chance to check out the show. You guys have got to check out the show. At some point during the show here, I'm going to post your some of the photos and videos from your Facebook.
Awesome.
And so were you always interested in broadcasting? Was that like a passion from growing up?
It's always been my purpose to help others, to talk about, issues and just be in front of everyone, say the things that people are afraid of, talk about subjects that are sensitive. So I've always had that knack of chatting, which, a lot of people give me my nickname of Chat, hence last name Chatman. So
That's
So
appropriate. I like that.
so I've always, was the talk in the room, always ran my mouth all the time. And so it was just something that came natural to me. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I did my homework, did my research, and kind of, built to master my craft of something that I've already naturally wanted to do, or have been doing, I should say.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you for having a voice. I caught also some of your videos. You guys can check them out at the TJ Chatman Show or on your personal page, TJ Chatman. So let's jump right in. How I really found out about what you're doing is I was scrolling through my news feed on Facebook, and I stumbled on this photo of you sitting at the table. You had a literal seat at the table, and you're doing something in Sanford that is something the whole community needs. Would you talk about the March on Juneteenth?
Absolutely. My partner, Danielle Bowman, she came up with the idea of, how sometimes we just, brainstorm and you got, I got an idea, hey, what do you think about this, and this? And from there, she set up a meeting with some of the city officials for the city of Sanford, and possibly had the opportunity to sit down with everyone and discuss what our goal was and what we were trying to do. And because of that, they were amazed at what opportunities we wanted to bring to the community, to the city of Sanford, and approved us primarily basically to hold this protest march, which will be this coming Friday, starting at 2 p.m. at Fort Mellon Park. And this is also, in conjunction with Juneteenth, which, is June 19th. And so we wanted to use that day to march for racial equality. And the day is upon us.
It's coming fast. So tell us a little bit, for those who may be watching this now or going back to watch the replay, what is Juneteenth? What is, can you explain a little bit about the significance of Juneteenth?
Right. Juneteenth is the significance of when the Emancipation was signed and the slaves were freed, hence our freedom. And so that's basically what it comes down to, hence the Juneteenth. And of course, we've been fighting ever since then, and we're still continuing to fight in 2020. And so that's why we wanted to put this march together, because for some reason, a lot of people now are starting to wake up. We've seen this countless of times. Something happens to an unarmed, black man, black woman, they're killed, and we start, rallying the troops and, Black Lives Matter. And then next thing you know, it dies back down and nothing happens. And so this time it feels different. And a lot of people ask me, TJ, why does it feel so different to you? Well, I'll tell you why, because the numbness is starting to wear off. And because a lot of us have been so numb to the situation, we've dealt with it and then, okay, all right, let's go back to normal. But now, because the numbness is wearing off, the people who have been programmed are now starting to become unprogrammed, and it's starting to hit home now, and people are waking up, and the numbness is wearing off. So this definitely is something is going to happen. Change is coming. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. My guest this morning, TJ Chatman. He is the host and founder of the TJ Chatman Show, and he's also one of the organizers. You have a partner, Danielle Bowman, of the Juneteenth March in Sanford. So we're going to bring our other guests in this morning. Like I said, this is a power-packed panel. What I would love for the viewers to do right now is go ahead and tag a few people in the comments. Just do that @, tag someone, let them know that we're here and we're live. And it will alert them to go back and watch the replay if they miss us live. Hit the share button if you are watching live. Good morning. I'm seeing all the good mornings on our Facebook page, but I want to share with you how to comment during the StreamYard broadcast. Go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. Again, that's StreamYard.com/Facebook. And all you have to do is click the opt-in button, and we can see all of your comments during the broadcast. I see a lot of you guys on my phone, but not here on the broadcast. So StreamYard.com/Facebook and hit the share button. let's say good morning to some folks, and then we'll bring the ladies in on this discussion. Is that okay, TJ?
Oh, that's perfect.
Awesome. So good morning, Edna. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. Elisa, good morning. Thank you for being with us. Angeline, good morning. To all of you who I see also on Facebook on my cell phone, I know that you're going to jump over, get that StreamYard, opt in, and join us with your comments here on the live broadcast. So, TJ, how do people get involved in a peaceful march? Thank you for organizing a peaceful march. Thank you for getting a seat at the table to also work with the community. You're working with the people in the community. And not against all the different entities that exist, local government. Obviously, the police have to be involved as much as some of us have our feelings about that.
Right.
You're pulling resources together to make this successful. First of all, how did you do that, and then how can we get involved?
Well, I mean, I have with my platform, I have quite a few listeners, and I've done a lot of red carpet event. So with people just knowing me, and it came out with just being able to use word of mouth, use my resources and be able to, get a team together to say, hey, share this, this is what we got going on. And then it starts, like wildfire, and it starts spreading. And so for those who are wanting to come join us, come out to Fort Mellon Park Friday at 2 p.m. We have special guests. We have the mayor of Sanford, who was recently appointed, Art Woodruff, along with community advocate Russell Drake. He's going to be a guest, one of our keynote speakers. We're going to have spoken word artists going to be there, and so it's just going to be a peaceful, enjoying event. And please come out. Bring your mask, of course, try to practice social distance as much as possible. This march is going to be fun. Bring your chairs, your blankets, whatever you want, some water, sit down, because this is going to be fun. And I'm excited.
There's actually going to be a moment where everyone might be stationary for a little bit to hear some of the people raising their voice, obviously, for this cause. So how many people do you anticipate joining the march?
Wow. That's a good question. We anticipate the whole community. We would like to see, as many as possible, good 300-400. But something like this can be very huge. Once word gets out, we're doing the best we can to get the word out. Press release, local media, local newspapers, hey, just spread the word, and we'll see what happens on Friday. And whatever shows up, we're still going to do what we came to do.
Thank you for stepping out there. There's so many people who are still silent, not engaging in the conversation, even not posting on social media. There's people who are afraid. I mean, we can sit here and judge them or say whatever we want to say about it. There are people who are afraid, and that is the reason why we're all fighting this fight. Is because people are afraid, and they're not free. When you're afraid, you're not free. So, TJ, as we shift the conversation, we're going to be talking to candidate for State Attorney Monique Worrell this morning, and Schellie. What is the outcome that you are going for with this march? What, at the end of the day, what is that end result you're looking for?
Be the solution and not the problem. See something, say something. Let's come together. Let's unify. Let's be unified and make change happen. Wrong is wrong. Let's do something and come together and stop fighting with each other. And that's pretty much ultimately the end result, is to bring awareness to the situation. Stop being that silent person, because morally, it's wrong. Don't worry about the backlash. Don't worry about who's going to say this to you, because I'm sure somebody talked about you all the time anyway. So what do is you get up, you step up and voice, how you feel. And so my goal ultimately basically is to bring awareness and to bring about change. And change starts by unifying one another, coming together.
It really does. Go ahead, Monique.
It was Desmond Tutu who said to be silent in the time of injustice is to have already taken the side of the oppressor. And I just think that's so important for people to understand that This isn't something that you can be silent about. This isn't just a one-off occurrence that, happened one time and we can say, well, it was just that one officer, or it was an isolated incident, or we don't know all the facts. This is a constant reoccurrence and actually going back 400 years in this country, right? So now is the time to really show where you stand in the time of injustice is to have already taken the side of the oppressor. And I wholeheartedly believe that that's true.
Monique, thank you for jumping in there. As TJ was sharing, that this is our time to come together and don't worry about some of the backlash because it's going to happen. That was such a great transition to talk about one of the reasons why I thought, man, I really want Monique to come on this Town Hall Tuesday because of some posts that I saw, but also how you're speaking out about reform. So for those who don't know you, would you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your platform? My guest, Monique Worrell for State Attorney.
Yeah, so I'm Monique Worrell. I'm running for State Attorney for Orange and Osceola County. If you're not registered to vote, you can do that until July the 20th. I am going to be in the Democratic primary. So to vote for me, you would have to be a Democrat. And I'm running for the office of the state attorney. And why that's really important in the grand scheme of everything that we're seeing here is because people are angry at what has happened, right? We're angry at the murder of George Floyd. We're angry at the murder of Breonna Taylor. We're angry at the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. But we're also angry because of the inaction. We're angry because those individuals committed murder without any consequences until we began protesting and we began marching. And it shouldn't have taken that to get us to that point. The officials in place, the state attorney, the district attorneys, should have brought charges against those individuals without a public uprise. So the seat that I'm running for is directly related to that, in that it's the state attorney who makes a decision as to whether or not to bring charges against someone, what charges to bring against someone, and what sentence to seek against someone. So that's the critical role of the state attorney in this. And what I've been saying is that, someone doesn't join the force today and commit a murder tomorrow. There's a punch that's thrown for someone who's in custody. There's a kick that's thrown for someone who's in handcuffs. There's a taser that's used inappropriately when it's not necessary. All of these things lead up to the officer being emboldened to actually commit the murder of someone who they have in police custody. And we need to start prosecuting them from then, from the battery, from the assault. We need to start prosecuting from them so that, one, we remove officers from the force who are a danger to the community, but also because we send the message that this is not acceptable and will not be tolerated in our community.
So powerful. I know that some people are just tuning in. I want you to know what you have walked into this morning. This is Town Hall Tuesday. We are having the discussion this morning. My guest is Monique Worrell for State Attorney in Osceola and Orange County. And we're talking a little bit about your platform, but we're really talking about how to make change. How does change even happen? And in part, some change happens through who we elect, who we stand behind, and what those platforms are that for the people who are representing us.
Right.
And so, Monique, you are big on reform, and I would love for you to talk about why that is so important. And I'm going to bring Schellie in here as we kind of tackle some of the things you touched on were simply about, the mental state of those who are in power, those who are in the police force. And we're going to bring in Schellie Fanfan in a moment. But talk about reform.
Yeah. So, criminal justice reform is a national hot topic now. And because of that, a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon and say, yes, criminal justice reform. But do you even really know what it means? And from their discussion, my answer is no, right? We have a criminal legal system that has a history of oppression, right? There are racial disparities that are present within the criminal justice system. This isn't something that I'm just saying. If you Google it or do any sort of research at all whatsoever, you'll see that minority representation they're overrepresented in the criminal legal system, and that's not reflective of their participation in crime within the community. In Florida, even though African Americans make up less than 22% of the community, they make up 46% of the prison population, the similar statistics for the Hispanic population. So we have to face that. We have to address it. And I was in a forum the other night with my opponents where they talked about, well, we need to have conversations about, racism, and we need to talk about it. We've been talking about it for decades. It's time for us to stop talking about it and actually take decisive action to fix it. And I believe that you do that by tracking research within your own house, within your own office, to see what role does this office play in those racial disparities, and then implementing policies to stop it. And yes, it's training on implicit bias. It's training on overt bias, but it's also accountability and going back and saying, I'm looking at your case file and I see that for this crime, you sentenced someone this way. For the same crime, you sentenced someone for a different race, a different way. Do you have an explanation for that? Right? So it's actually confronting it. And this is hard work. This isn't easy stuff. And people are like, well, I don't want to accuse my prosecutors of racism. If it's evident in the numbers, it's not an accusation. It's a fact that has to be corrected. So for me, reform is doing something differently to achieve something different. Let me say it again. Reform is doing something differently to achieve something different, because, and Dr. Fanfan can co-sign with me on this one, you cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So Schellie, I wanted to bring you in. I know, TJ, you and I are just sitting like we're about to witness some powerful conversation right here. We are part of it. So Schellie Fanfan, thank you for being my guest this morning. Would you introduce yourself briefly to everyone, and then we'd love for you to chime in.
Absolutely. Schellie Fanfan. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in Orlando, Florida. I'm the CEO and owner of Ask Schellie Consulting, where I lead a team of emotional intelligence experts that help corporations perform at peak performance through the provision of psychoeducation. I also do individual counseling and group counseling as well for those who are trying to overcome emotional injury.
And so as Monique was addressing some things and what she was sharing, I wanted you to give your very valuable feedback.
Absolutely. There's so much, so many different angles that I can come in on. I do want to say, I think the greatest lesson to take away here is trauma, really understanding how trauma works and how it's affecting both ends, the side of the police officers and the side of some of the victims that we have seen. And this is in no way trying to excuse the acts that we're marching for and trying to seek justice for, because I think that when I have made comments before about defunding the police officers not being an answer, it is viewed as not necessarily being a support of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is absolutely not the case. But because I have treated so many police officers in my time as a licensed psychotherapist, I can see and understand the traumatic stressors that they have to deal with each and every day. And there is no safe space for them to go to get the help that they need. And so we're dealing with individuals who are operating in their trauma brain. And I gave a brief lesson about that a couple of weeks ago when I was here on the show. I'm going to quickly talk about that now, just to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about today. So the traumatic brain is basically when there has been some type of emotional injury as a result of exposure or multiple exposures to aversive experiences that surpass a person's capacity to cope. And as a result of that, it causes emotional injury. Trauma also causes brain injury. And this type of brain injury, and I can go deep into why it causes brain injury for this segment and to be mindful of time, the injury causes impulsivity. It causes the emotional centers of the brain to be activated at almost all times. And so people who are operating in their trauma brain, they often see everything else as a threat. Their brains are operating in a way to cause the person to continue to survive. We call that the fight or flight response. And so when the emotional centers of the brain are activated, it suppresses your ability to think. This is just basic neurology. And so again, when the emotional centers of the brain are activated, it causes your thinking to be suppressed. And so when we have these officers who are operating in their trauma brain because they have this emotional injury that has not been addressed, they haven't found a safe space to do so, they are literally wounded generals that are out policing our streets. And so we have to make the care that they need and the intervention that they need, the access to mental health services and support that they need to overcome those emotional injuries in order for them to be effective, in order for them to think logically during those traumatic moments and those stressful moments, to be able to access memories from their training on how to deal with certain things. And so how do we do that? How do we keep them from operating in their trauma brain? Treatment, new information, consistent training, and most importantly, accountability. Accountability. Without accountability, there can only be destruction. Without accountability, there can only be destruction. Destruction to self and destruction to others. And so we have to be able to take a look at the issues systemically. We cannot look at things unilaterally. Problems are systemic. And so we have to really take a look at what we are doing to assure that we are caring and addressing the emotional injury, those multiple exposures to traumatic stress that our police officers deal with each and every day. On the other side of it as well, we ask ourselves, why does an abused woman stay in a marriage? Why does an alcoholic continue to drink? Drug addict continue to use? Why does an autistic person not respond to the directives of a police officer? Why does a criminal reoffend? These whys, or why does a schizophrenic tend to be aggressive during interaction with police? That why is something that years ago we realized that, wow, police officers need to understand that why. They need to be able to see the signs of mental illness and be able to address it, right? They need to understand that why. They need to understand how to interact with these individuals in order to truly take dominion and control over a situation. You cannot control or address what you cannot understand. You cannot control or address matters that you do not understand. So there has been training where officers have been trained on how to address crisis, how to work with the mentally ill. Where am I going with this? We've been talking about secondary trauma. This stuff is real. This experience that people are going through, it causes trauma. Watching the George Floyd video, that is traumatic. Watching our people die in the hands of police officers, these are traumatic. It's traumatic to the person and the family members, and it's also traumatic to those who see it. There's something called secondary trauma, which is the trauma is not directly, you have not been directly impacted by the aversive situation, but just by being a bystander, just by being a witness, you too can experience the same traumatic symptomology as the victim. We are all experiencing that. We're wondering why our emotions are all over the place. Why can't I sleep? Why do I have this this overwhelming anger? It's called secondary trauma. We have to understand the same way that traumatic brain will cause a police officer to not think, to react, to be in trigger mode, and not necessarily be operating in logical thinking, is the same way that we see with the other side. You know, there's something called, we talked about the fight or flight mode. That means that your body is literally telling you, your brain is literally commanding you to save yourself. And so a lot of African-American males, African-Americans period, find their interactions with police officers very threatening. And so fight or flight means fight or run. And so we have to understand why we're seeing, like, why are these, just like we said, why does a woman, stay in an abusive relationship? Why? The same question is, why do criminals run? Why do criminals resist arrest? These are mental health components that we have to understand and provide the funding for that education and training.
That's so powerful. Monique, a lot of us are sitting here and we're like, well, what do we do? A lot of us have seen this. Now we all have experienced secondary trauma. I thank you, Schellie, for painting the picture of really at different levels what we're all experiencing mentally in our mental health. Monique, how do we take action? What do we do? We have the protests. We see what's happening on television. We know that we can vote, but what is your take on how can people really make change? How do we hold police accountable? How does that even happen?
So I think the important thing really to understand is that anti-police, for me, and I know that I don't speak for everyone, but for me, I am not anti-police. I am anti-police brutality, right? And those two things are not the same. And I think something that Dr. Schellie talked about was very important about the trauma that's present within law enforcement. However, something that she said that I believe is equally important is the trauma that is present within people who are offenders or accused as being offenders, right? So we have to look at this as a whole. And we can't say that, oh, well, law enforcement needs a pass because they have trauma, if we're then going to say this offender doesn't need a pass because they have trauma, right? So we have to look at this system as a whole. And if we really are focused on building a stronger, safer community, which that's what I'm focused on. And I think that essentially that's what many of the people who are involved in this want, is a stronger, safer community. We have to look at the whole picture. We can't take out one portion of it without looking at how that one portion impacts the rest of the system. And so I'm a psychology major, not that I have any near level the experience in this that Dr. Schellie does. But the reason I did that was because, as you know, my reason for going into criminal justice is because my brother was diagnosed with mental illness and then ended up in the criminal legal system as a result of his diagnosis. And I needed to understand the interplay between psychology and the law, right? And one of the things that we know is that there are childhood trauma that impacts individuals and why they end up in the criminal legal system. There's ACEs, there's this whole spectrum of evaluation that we can actually discern childhood trauma and how that impacts individuals who are involved in the criminal legal system. So just like Dr. Schellie said about addicts who keep using, it's not because they want to be criminals, it's because it's a physiological illness that they cannot control. Yeah. So we have to look at this big picture. And to your question, because I know I've gone off on a tangent, but this just all plays, together. How do we make change? We make change by putting people in office who understand these things.
That's right.
And don't just look at all cops is bad, all criminals or people who are accused of committing crime as bad, and start looking at the why. And one of the things in my platform is looking at a root cause analysis. Why are people offending and how can we address the why? Because we can put someone in prison 1,000 times. If we don't address the why, they're going 1,000 more. So since the 70s, we've increased our prison population by 300%. Just like marinate on that for a moment, by 300%. And it's an open door because people are coming out and they're going back in, and they're coming out and they're going back in. And it's not because they're deviant, it's because we never addressed the why. We never got to the addict and said, you know what? If I send you to prison as an addict, you're going to come home an addict. So let me not do that. Let me do something that's actually going to address the fact that you're an addict. If I send you to prison and you're mentally ill, you're coming home mentally ill. And for both of those subgroups, because of the trauma of prison, they're coming home worse than when we sent them there to begin with. And because of the violence of prison, they're coming home violent when we didn't send them there that way. So how are we impacting our community and making us stronger and safer? We're not. we're making it worse. We're making it more violent because we are turning people who weren't violent into violent individuals.
Right.
We're making people who already suffer trauma more traumatized when they come out. So of course they're going to reoffend. This isn't rocket science. It's just statistics. You just look at the studies and you see what's happening, and you can see that we have the result that we have created.
Wow.
Wow. So I know TJ had a question. You want to jump in there?
Oh yes. So Monique, this is the talk show host coming out of it now. So you've been talking about, you know, anti police brutality, and a lot of people have been asking me this question about, you know, at what point can citizens protect themselves or defend themselves from police brutality? Because, you know, we're citizens, and if, you know, we're fighting each other, you know, we're trying to, person's coming at me, I'm going to try to defend myself, whatever the case may be. But when you have constant cases of police brutality, when can, you know, citizens, you know, say, hey, you know what? I know I'm getting knocked around. I know I'm getting beat up. I need to fight back. But now you're putting yourself at risk of being shot, or, you know, there's laws saying, you know, you can't, you know, batter on the Leo. So at what point do you defend yourself as a citizen from police brutality?
All right. So I don't have an answer to that question, because the reality of it is, if you defend yourself from police brutality, you're going to get killed. That's just the reality. That's just the reality. So I don't want to be in a place where I'm telling you, well, at this point, you can defend yourself and you can be within your legal right. Because the reality of it is, even if you're within your legal right, that's not going to stop you from being killed. One of the very first felony cases that I tried was of a man who the state attorney was charging with battery on a law enforcement officer. Now, in order to be charged with resisting or battery on a law enforcement officer, you have to be resisting or battering an officer in the legal execution of a lawful duty. Okay? They have to be in the legal execution of a lawful duty. So, if they're not in the legal execution of a lawful duty, then it would seem that you have a right to defend yourself. But who's going to determine whether or not they're in a legal execution of a lawful duty? Are you going to determine that? Because if you do, you're going to get shot. Okay. So I'm not going to advise anyone to try to defend themselves against police brutality, because I want you to come home alive. Right. So in this case, my client had his eye swollen shut in his booking photo. He had lacerations all over his face. His lip was ripped. His face was black and blue. And they charged him with battery on a law enforcement officer. So in the trial, I asked the officer, well, what injuries did you sustain? And he said none. So let me get this right. My client's face has been brutalized, and you didn't receive any injuries, and you've charged him with battery on a law enforcement officer, which is a felony. So the jury said absolutely not, right? The jury was like, no, we're not going for this. This is ridiculous. But you're not always going to have a jury who's going to do that, because we don't always have juries of our peers, right? That's a whole nother show for a whole nother day, right? So in this case, this gentleman was lucky, one, because he lived, right? And two, because the jury said, no, you don't get to brutalize someone and then come in here and say that they beat on you. But if you defend yourself, you're putting yourself in harm's way. So I cannot in good conscience tell anyone that there's a certain point in which that they can defend themselves. All I can say is keep those cell phone videos rolling. Keep those cell phone videos rolling, because that's what's bringing a lot of this to the light.
Right. Wow. So we are almost out of time this morning on our Town Hall Tuesday. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Where you are right now, for every viewer that is watching, if you're on YouTube, thank you so much for watching my YouTube channel. Please hit the share button. So I'm going to task and challenge each and every one of you. This discussion by far has been one of the most enriching, because I think as we're learning, each of us that are lay people, we're not psychologists, we're not in political government, but we're learning. And with that knowledge, we can impact change. I need all of you to hit the share button, and where you send it is up to you. You want to send it to a group, you want to send it to a page, you want to send it just to your news feed, hit the share button and hit share again. Also tag someone. We want someone to come back and watch this broadcast. So I'm going to go around the horn. If you guys will have about 30, 45 seconds. I'm not timing you, so please don't rush through your last statement. But in respect for your time, because I know each of you have to start your day, just one last thought on the topic of what we've been talking about this morning. Last thoughts that you have. TJ, let's kick it off with you.
Well, my final thoughts are simple. I can't express it enough. Get out and vote. Register to vote. You know, we talk about what we want to do. We need to vote for the people who are going to make a difference. Put the people in office, and it starts on the local level. Yes, I know we want to vote for the president and we want to vote for. No, it starts right there in your own community. Starts right there. That's how this whole cycle begins. So definitely exercise your right to vote. Go register if you're not registered, because change is coming. Change is happening. Enough is enough.
And TJ, something that just came to mind as if we wrap, and thank you so much for being my guest. The TJ Chatman Show, you guys have got to go check out his page as well. And hopefully we can partner together again soon. I would love to do that and support you, TJ.
Absolutely.
What
the show's actually tonight.
Awesome. And the show's on tonight. What time?
Yeah, 8 p.m.
8 p.m. TJ Chatman Show. It's right on Facebook. You guys can just look it up, the TJ Chatman Show, and I'll put it back in my post. TJ, is there any aspect of this peaceful march on Friday at 2 p.m. in Sanford at Fort Mellon Park, in case you guys joined us late, 2 p.m. on Friday in Sanford, Fort Mellon Park, is there any aspect of the march that includes getting voters registered? Yes,
absolutely. There's going to be two groups out there. One group in particular is going to be the, remember this correctly, it's going to be the Education Fund group, Stand Your Ground Education Fund. Let me just make sure I don't want to butcher it up.
I'm sure if we're out there, we can see it. We'll be able to find it if there's a place. But it just kind of came to mind, and I thought, man, that would be amazing.
Yeah, and pretty much her name, we spoke yesterday on the phone, and she was really good to talk to, because someone reached out to me, recommended her. Name's Monisha Perkins, and she is with Equal Ground Education, and they are out to help people register to vote, and they're going to be there along with some other voter committees that are going to be there. So we're definitely going to have a place for you to register to vote during that event. So yes.
For anyone who's watching, you have a few seconds to post a comment. Even if you post your comment now and we end the live broadcast, my guests, I'm sure they would be more than happy to go back and look at your comments and connect with you as well. We're going to go to Schellie, and then we'll end with the final thoughts from Monique Worrell. So thank you, TJ. Again, Friday, 2 p.m. It's the Juneteenth Peaceful March in Sanford, and there'll be more than just a march. It's actually going to be some people doing spoken word and other people that will be present and speaking. So TJ, thank you for organizing that, and thank you to Danielle Bowman as well.
Thanks for having us.
Schellie, 30 seconds or so, your final thoughts.
Well, we are living in some amazing times right now, and we are dealing with stressors on a daily basis. We're dealing with opposition on a daily basis. I have summarized how people generally deal with these things in something that I call the 3 A's. First, avoidance. These are people who are going to deny the truth is the truth because they don't want to deal. People who are going to alter their moods through substances, saying drunk or high or other distractions to not have to deal with the truth that they are aware of. And just people who just want to unplug from the world. They just want to avoid. The second way that people generally deal is through aggression, whether it's verbal aggression, property destruction, whatever, just cheering or leading destructive and aggressive movements. And then the last one is action. These are people that are taking their emotions, they're taking their passion, they're taking their enough is enough, they're taking all of that and they're putting it into action. And the only coping mechanism that I just talked about that actually affects change is action. Make sure that you are scaling yourself, that you are being very mindful of your unique needs in this season. It's very important that we take dominion over our emotions and ensure that we are well, and also to take action. Know who your local, elected officers are, get involved in local government. If we are not on the agenda, we will be on the menu. I have a friend that's running for New York State office, New York State Senate, and she always says, if we are not on the agenda, we will be on the menu. So we have to get a seat at the table. We have to understand the power of policy and legislation. And it starts as simple as stop dodging your jury duty. Let's start there. Hello. We're supposed to be trusted by jury of our peers, but if you're not there because you're declaring all these mental illnesses that you don't have, then start there.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I couldn't have said it better.
Take action and over your own emotions, like I said, and take action in the earth. We all have the capacity to influence outcomes in the earth.
Wow.
Absolutely powerful and well said. I don't think anyone could have said it better. Monique, would you give us your final thoughts for the broadcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, thank you guys so much for having me. It has been a pleasure to sit on this panel with my esteemed guests. And, the time for civic engagement is now. It has never been more important than it is right now. We cannot sit back and allow other people to decide our future and the future of our children. As I have been marching over these last few weeks, and I've had the opportunity to speak at some of the marches, this is personal for me. I am a Black woman married to a Black man raising 3 Black sons. So any day I could get the phone call, and I am acutely aware of that reality and do not take their safety for granted. So if we really want to change, then we have to be present in making that change. In my race, I'm running against 3 people who have been a part of the establishment that has contributed to mass incarceration in this country. And while they have come against me and said that I don't have experience as a prosecutor, I have, I think, what is the most important experience, and that is experience as a criminal justice reform advocate. And if we want criminal justice reform, then we have to elect someone who has been working for criminal justice reform. Yes. And I am that person. I have been fighting for criminal justice reform for 20 years. It is all I have ever done. And it's all I ever will do, whether or not I'm elected. So I think it's important for us to learn and study about the people who are running. Don't just listen to what they say, but go the extra mile and look them up and see what it is that they have done. Yes. Because if their words don't align with their history, then you know that we have an imposter. And by putting an imposter in place, we are destined to perpetuate what has happened for decades and decades and decades before. And, I was at a march yesterday with some young people, and they were like, you can't listen to the elected officials because they get up here and they tell us that they're going to do this and then they do that. And, I have no argument for that. I've never been an elected official. I know that it's true. People get up there and they tell us that they're going to do one thing and then they do something else. But I can tell you that if you look at their history, and if that thing that they're telling you that they're going to do is consistent with everything they've ever done, then you have a good chance at believing that that's what they're actually going to do. Yeah. And that's what I promise and commit to the community to do as your state attorney, is to bring criminal justice reform, to bring accountability for government officials, including law enforcement officers, to stand with the men and women of law enforcement who actually join the force because they want to protect and serve and make our communities stronger and safer, and to call out those who have not and hold them accountable for their misconduct.
Yes.
We cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. It's time for a fresh perspective on justice. Please vote on August 18th, 2020. Your local elected officials impact your daily life more than any other election than you can vote in. Thank you so much, Candy, for having me. And thank you to TJ and Dr. Schellie for being on the panel with me. This was an amazing experience.
My pleasure.
This really was an amazing conversation. Monique, I'm going to have you close us out one more time with those dates because we will all leave this broadcast and forget. So not only do I want you all to hit the share button if you're watching this morning, but write this down. Write this down. Monique, what are the dates and important dates this month and next month?
So in July, the 20th is the last day to register to vote. So if you're not registered to vote, go to my website and under Get Involved, you will see a link there. And it's not something that you're doing through my website. That link is going to take you out of my website onto the Division of Elections page, and it'll take you where you can register to vote. You need to do that by July the 20th. Yeah, Candy, would you click on the Get to Register to Vote so that they can see? It's not something that you do through my webpage. I don't hold any of your information. It just is a link that will take you to the Division of Elections webpage. So you can find that on MoniqueForStateAttorney.com. You could also Google it if you don't want to go through my website, and you can do that there. Register to vote by July the 20th and vote by August the 18th. So, here in Florida, we usually have early voting. I'm sure we'll have early voting in some fashion this time around. So you can early vote usually the week before, right up until the 18th. There's also vote by mail. And I know that vote by mail ballots, you can register for your vote by mail ballot. I'm not sure what the date is on that, but you can find that out on the Division of Election website. If you decide that, COVID's crazy and you don't want to go in person to vote, you can vote by mail. I don't care how you vote, just vote, right? Olita Adams said back in the day, and I know I'm showing my age now, I don't care how you get here, just get here. I don't care how you vote, just vote. Because if you don't vote, your voice will not be heard. If you don't vote, change cannot be made.
That's right.
You need to vote like our lives depend on it. Because they do.
Because it does.
Exactly.
It does. And I want to thank all of my guests again this morning. I did click on that link, and because it brought up another page, I realized I wasn't sharing that second page. So this is the page that it goes to if you're on Monique's website, and I'll put the website up here as well. It is MoniqueForStateAttorney.com. And then when you click on the Get Involved tab, you'll go to /get-involved. So again, thank you to each of you, because I feel like each of you is a pivotal part of us impacting and making change happen. I hope that everyone who is watching was impacted in some way. I have comments here on Facebook that I would love for each of you maybe to go back and connect with the viewers and engage in some conversation. I think there's some questions also that weren't answered, but I want to thank each of you again for being my guest. We'll have another Town Hall Tuesday, next Tuesday. Monique, did you have something else?
Yes, please donate. Please donate. Click on the donate button. Please donate.
Yes, gotta have a campaign. Gotta have fun for it.
Please donate. Campaigns cost money. I need to get the word out. I know you're tired of people asking you for money, and I totally get it. But the only way that we can reach the number of people that we need to make this a reality is with finances. So please, if you've got 10, 20, $50 that you can spare, please go on there and click the donate button and donate so that we can win this race. Thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt, Cam.
Oh, no, the music can be started over. If we left the broadcast without saying that's where we fall short. So thank you again. I really appreciate you, Schellie, Fanfan, TJ Chatman, Monique Worrell. We are here every Tuesday. We're going to have Town Hall Tuesday. My guests are welcome to come back. Of course, you all are welcome to come back next Tuesday, and or we'll have some new folks to come and join the panel. Thank you for watching the Good Morning Show with Candy Bryan. I am absolutely overwhelmed. I'm going to go back and watch the replay. Please go click share. Add someone to your comments and let them know that we have the replay out there. Until next time, you guys have a great day. Thank you for being my guest on the Good Morning Show.
Be safe, everyone.
Bye.